George Clymer narrowly escaped death from a tomahawk when he accidentally took a route which led him into an area where savage Indians had recently murdered a man. George would have been at that very place had he not chosen a different road at the last minute.
George Clymer.
George Clymer.
George Clymer.
George Clymer was born March 16, 1739 in Philadelphia. Unfortunately, both of George's parents died by the time he was 7, leaving him an orphan. His uncle, William Coleman, gave him a good education and taught him to love reading. George apprenticed in his uncle's counting room to prepare for a career as a merchant. However, he didn't enjoy the family business as much as he enjoyed reading and science. Through all of his studies, George became well-versed in law, farming, fine arts, history, and politics. Though he was capable of teaching, he seemed only interested in more learning. After finishing up his apprenticeship with his uncle, George went into the merchant business for himself, despite his lacking passion for that. He did, however, find that the work left him plenty of time to read and to enjoy learning what he wanted to learn. On March 22nd, 1765, George married the love of his life, Elizabeth Meredith, and the pair went on to have 5 children together. George found himself in opposition to the British rule very early on, since he foresaw the overwhelming influence they would soon implement. He was a patriot leader in the Tea Act and the Stamp Act, and as a member of the Philadelphia Council of Safety in 1775 and one of the first Continental treasurers. He was elected to the Continental Congress in 1776 and served there for several years. During this time, George signed the Declaration of Independence on the 4th of July, 1776, at the age of 38. 1777 was a big year for Mr. Clymer. He was sick, and he needed time for recovery. That year, his family was attacked by a band of British soldiers while they were living just outside of Philadelphia. The furniture in the house and many of the other items in the house were destroyed. Fortunately, the family made their escape into the woods nearby while the British ransacked their home. The intention was to tear down the entire house, but they changed their mind when they learned that the house didn't even belong to the Clymer family. And Mr. Clymer was in Philadelphia at the time. Also that year, Mr. Clymer was to go to Pittsburgh with the mission of reaching an agreement with several of the Indian tribes in that country and to enlist the warriors into the service of the United States. On this trip, George narrowly escaped death from a tomahawk when he accidentally took a route which led him into an area where savage Indians had recently murdered a man. George would have been at that very place had he not chosen a different road at the last minute. In 1784 to 88, he was a member of the legislature of his native state, working to form a more efficient constitution for the general government. His last national public duty was a mission to the Cherokees and the Creek Indians in Savannah, Georgia. In 1805, he was elected first president of Philadelphia Bank, first president of the Philadelphia Academy of Fine Arts, and the vice president of the Philadelphia Agricultural Society. He held all of these positions until his death on the 23rd of January, 1813, at the age of 73. Charles Augustus Goodrich writes of George, "He excused himself from nothing that belonged to his office. He neglected nothing. He never once omitted to attend a meeting of the directors unless prevented by sickness or absence from the city, and these exceptions were very rare occurrence. He was indeed the first to come, and so the board never waited for a moment for their president." Wow, Punctuality is one of the most important traits. Being where you say you're going to be, when you say you're going to be there. How valuable are the important examples of these founding fathers? So grateful to learn about these great men. The end.